His name is actually Marshall Walter Taylor. He was born in 1878, died in 1932, I believe. And he was a true pioneer in sports. Um, I guess you could think of him as being the Michael Jordan or the Tiger Woods of his era. Because to keep it in perspective, slavery was abolished in 1865. His grandfather was a slave. His father actually served in the Civil War on the side of the Union, and he was born in 1878, which was only 13 years after slavery was abolished. Yet, 34 years removed from that, he became a world champion, or the world champion in cycling. So that's to just look at the timing. It just lets you know just how monumental it was. And then to think of the fact that this was a decade before Jack Johnson, the boxer, and then a half century before Jackie Robinson broke the color lines in baseball. So it was just a major accomplishment. Back when he was a teenager, about maybe 13, 14 years old, in Indianapolis, he was working in front of a bike shop and doing tricks, stunts on the bike. And his uniform was a soldier's uniform, and so he became known as Major Marshall Taylor. He recognized the climate that he was dealing with, and one of the quotes that he said was that life is too short for a man to hold bitterness in his heart. And I think that's just really epitomizes what he stood for. But in that regard, there were so many different things he had to deal with when he was faced with racing in different events. He was young. I think the first event that actually opened his eyes up to becoming a cyclist was when he was working for the bike shop in Indianapolis. The bike shop owner put him in an event, and it was a 10-mile race. And the shop owner told him, look, you can just ride for about a mile. I know you can't finish the entire 10 miles, so just go about a mile down the street, and then you can turn around and that'll be fine. Well, he actually rode the entire 10 miles and finished 10 full seconds ahead of everyone else, and just collapsed at the finish line because he was so tired. But he was only 13 years old at that time, and I'm sure his competitors at that point were adults. So, it was just one of the things that started him in it. But in that region of the country, of course, given his race, he was not accepted as a participant. And so he wasn't allowed to participate. As a result, you had a lot of black cycling clubs and races that were put on to allow black cyclists to actually race. He couldn't officially race in the white races, and he won those races, so he became the black leader in cycling. Major Taylor, the bulk of his racing and riding was here in the United States. It was some time before he actually went to Europe or any other countries. Once he left the Midwest, Indianapolis area, he was actually taken by his mentor to Worcester, Massachusetts. The climate there was a little bit more acceptable to a black racing. And so he went there, and he actually became world champion while he was here in the United States, and that was in 1899. I believe he was about 20 years old at the time. And then it was, I believe, a year later when he won the American Sprint Championship, which he wasn't able to actually compete in for quite some time, because when he would go to the southern states, those promoters wouldn't allow him to race in those races. So he could never acquire the points that he needed to actually become the American champion. And I believe it was around 1900 when he went to Europe and raced. He didn't go before because he was a religious man, and they raced on Sundays. and he was adamant that he was not going to race on Sundays. And so I think what the promoters in Europe did, they wanted him there so badly that they changed some of the days that the races actually took place on. And so he was able to go over. He raced all of the European champions, and he beat them all. There is a national Major Taylor organization, and once people began to become knowledgeable about the legacy of Major Taylor, you started to see a lot of chapters cropping up around the country. And back in March of 2011, a group of us here in Little Rock actually formed the Major Taylor chapter here in Arkansas, and we're known as the Rock City Riders.